like Matt said, my name is Douglas Hanna, and I'm here to talk to you about why the traditional office is a thing of the past. So I talk about business. Come on. So I talk about business all the time. I was in Detroit earlier last month talking about customer service. I then went to New York, talk about our business strategy at a different conference. Then I was back here in Raleigh talking at Internet Summit about reputation management. But what interests me about talking about TEDxRaleigh today is because the topic that I'm talking about is way more interesting than business, certainly more interesting than web hosting. And I want to talk about freedom. So I want to start with a quote from the Dalai Lama. And my font didn't come through. That's okay. So he said, man, he was asked what surprises him most about humanity. And he said, man, because he sacrifices his health in order to make money. Then he sacrifices money to recuperate his health. And then, hold on, there's more. And then he's so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present, and it gets more depressing. The result being that he does not live in the present or the future, and here's the zinger. He lives as if he is never going to die, and then dies having never really lived. So I know what you're thinking, that your Facebook wall is a great place to find inspiring quotes. Just the other day, one of our coworkers who lives in Austin, Texas, posted this profound quote. I'm zooming in a little bit. It was Charlie Brown quote. I developed a new philosophy, only dread one day at a time. But I think, unless you work in a traditional office, that the Dalai Lama's quote is actually a little bit more profound and relevant to this. So basically what he's saying is that we give up things that are important to us, our health, our happiness, our time, our freedoms. That way we can then earn the means to buy health, happiness, time, and freedom. So it's kind of a weird cycle, and it's a cycle that seems to waste a lot of time and energy and effort. And I think the traditional office, does a lot of these things. So we work and we go to an office every day to give up our freedom. We might work in an office slightly more attractive than this one, but we're working really hard, and we're told when to show up, what to do, where to work, what to wear. When we can leave, when we're supposed to get there, and we're giving up a lot of our freedoms to be able to work in an office. And I really think that is a thing of the past, and that working from home helps address some of those. So if you think about that, when you go to your work and you sit in your cubicle every day, it's like an actually slightly smaller version of a prison cell. The difference is when you go to work, you're free to leave. You can quit, you can storm out, you can throw your computer on the ground and go out and in flames if you really want to. And that's harder to do in a prison. But you're really giving up a lot of your freedom every day when you go to work. That way you can gain things in the future which you might not even know what they are. And even if you're successful in your career, you're still kind of you still have to sacrifice a lot of things to these norms. And I think one of the reasons this occurs is because most people in this country, myself included, aren't really taught about self-management, which is so critical to working from home. So it starts the second you enter a classroom, or if you have kids, I hate to tell you, but your kids, when they go to their classes on Monday, are really, every day they're losing a little bit of self-management skills. If I was thinking about it, I'm like, wow, when I was in elementary school, it was actually the most managed time of my life. Like, I could have worked in the most oppressive work environment, but no one would have told me what to do in 15-minute increments the way that teachers do. And that's fine, that's the education system, and it's something that we're stuck with. And then when most people are not stuck with it in the long term, that's a different talk. But in the short term, and for the purpose of this talk, we need to understand that school kind of takes away our self-management abilities. And then what happens? You go to college, you might go to Duke, you might go to UNC, NC State, wherever, and you have this huge burst of freedom. No one is telling you what to wear, if to wear anything, depending on where you go. And then you don't have to go to class, you don't have to do your work, the professors don't really care. You gain a lot more freedom. Some people do well with that, and the self-management helps them. Other people don't do so well, and they find that they need a more managed environment. But what happens is that they graduate school, and then they're going to go off to live the American dream. I guess the American dream is watermelons and cute children. But I think what the American dream isn't is it's definitely not being micromanaged every day, 15-minute increments, hour increments, and being told when to go somewhere, what to do, and all these different things. I think the American dream definitely counteracts with that. This country was founded on the ideas of freedom and being able to set your own destiny and all these different things that we ironically jam down the throat of students in school. But then we go to the office as soon as we get our first job, and we lose a lot of that freedom. And I think the reason that remote workers succeed is generally because they have good self-management skills, and they might be taught those, and they might screen it out. So our company, we have about 40 people around the world, most of them in the U.S., and they work from home almost all the time. So we have an interview process that consists of about 5 interviews, a personality test, an aptitude test, and a trial period. And we still get employees who aren't really cut out to work from home. But what I think a lot of employers don't realize is the people who sit in our office, like we have a couple employees who come to our office every other Monday or something like that. And when they do come, I have no better idea what they're doing when they're sitting in their office than when they're at home. It's not like your boss, hopefully, doesn't stand over you and it's like, what is that YouTube video for? Why are you on YouTube? You can watch and you can slack off as easily at the office as at home. If the office was the magical solution to our productivity problems, I think we would be in a great place. And people who work from home, they're really utilizing the space they have in an efficient manner. So you live and you work in the same place, maybe not the same room, maybe you work from your bed, and that's okay. And it's a really efficient use of time and space and all these different things. So I have a question for the audience before I kind of get on the next thing. Let's see, how long is your commute? First of all, does anyone work from home already? Couple people. Whose commute is less than 10 minutes? 10 to 20? 20 to 30? More than 30? Okay, so we have some people who spend a lot of time in the car. And if you said your commute was 25 minutes, oh, my font came back, that's good. If your commute is about 25 minutes, you're statistically average. If you take public transportation, which if you live in this area, you likely do not, your commute would be 48 minutes. And that only counts, that's only the time that you're in the vessel of transportation. So whether it's spaceship or bus or anything in between, that's only the time. That's not the time to park or to go to the launch pad or whatever, however you get to work every day. And then what I think is most concerning, besides that's obviously a huge time suck, there are lots of things that a commute is inherently bad for, but this guy, Eric Hansen, he's a researcher at Lund University in Sweden, and he found that you're 40% more likely to get a divorce if your commute is more than 45 minutes a day. So if you control for all the other factors, your marriage is 40% more likely to fail in addition to like the 50% that it is already. So you're getting up to like 90. If you have a 45-minute commute, you might as well start filing the papers. And specifically, even if your marriage manages to stay together, he said that generally car and public transport users suffered more everyday stress, poorer sleep, greater exhaustion, and then he kind of rambled on about commuting and stuff like that. So what about the time you get ready? Like I guess conservatively that it takes the average person 10 minutes to get ready to a point beyond where they might normally get ready. So I work from home most days. That doesn't mean I don't shower, just for the record. I still shower every day, but I might have to spend more time if I went into an office and I had to look business professional and impress my employees and be like, oh, he knows how to dress and all these different things. This guy might take him longer than 10 minutes. That's okay. But let's assume that you spend 50 minutes in the car, that's statistical average, and 10 minutes getting ready each day. Weekly, that's about 4 hours that you're spending in the car and 50 minutes to get ready. Yearly, that's 42 hours that you just spend brushing your hair or whatever else you might need to do, and 208 hours in the car. And if you've been doing the math and you're good at that, I'm not, that translates into 10.41 days a year. So I know when I was growing up, my mom was like, I wish I had an extra hour in a day. If she didn't commute, she would have. It's actually about 48 minutes or something like that if you divide that by 24 and divide that by 60 or whatever the process is to get there. It's almost an extra hour in a day. What could you do with that? You could sleep more, you could eat more, you could shop more, whatever else you want to do. You'd spend more time with your kids, playing outside, exercising. There's so many things you can do with that extra time. And you're currently, if you drive to work, especially if you drive to work for a long amount of time, you're completely wasting that time. So what is the 800-pound elephant that we're kind of neglecting? What is the spaceship in the back of the stage that we're not acknowledging right now? And I'll give you a hint. It's green. And that spaceship or elephant or whatever large, very noticeable object is the environmental effects of your commute. So even if you do spend all that time in the car and you somehow manage to get an extra 10 days a year from it, your coworkers who are driving to work every day, there's 135 million of them, and this is in 2009, and there are a million more every year, so I guess 137 million now. 120 million use private automobiles, about 10 million use public transportation, and I assume the other 5 million teleported or something. And if we converted just 14% of those jobs to telecommuting positions, we'd eliminate 136 billion travel miles by 2020. Or if you keep going, by 2030, 171 billion. And that's like this weird curve of the commuters increasing but also decreasing at the same time, and it comes out to that. And what about gas? Obviously, you need to pay gas. Conservatively, if you spend $25 a week in gas, which like gets you to your grocery store now, I think, with prices of gas, that's $1,300 a year that you're just putting away for gas. That's not even including the amount of money that you probably spend on car maintenance and all these different things. A number of our employees used to have 2-car households, and then when they started working for us, they couldn't have a 1-car household because one of the people in the family no longer needs to commute to work. It's a huge money saver besides just the gas. You can get a job, and then you can get a bonus for whatever your car is worth when you sell it. And then once you get to work, or how do you get to work, first of all, and generally you probably take roads, most likely highways. I grew up in South Florida, and there were other ways to get to places besides I-40. So it was an adjustment for me. There's traffic, and I'm like, how do I get here besides sit in traffic? There is no other way. And to fix the roads, which are bad and we continue to expand, it would cost $100 billion to fix today's aging infrastructure. There was a huge infrastructure boom in like the 60s and 70s because they were running out of things to spend money on. And now we don't have that money to spend to keep those roads up. And then if 40, again, kind of getting back to these hypothetical numbers, if 40% of the workforce can work from home, that would save 53 million tons each year of greenhouse gas emissions, which would be the equivalent to taking 10 million cars off the road. I think the population of North Carolina is like somewhere in that number. So imagine if no one in North Carolina drove, how good that would be for the environment and probably traffic and lives and things of that nature as well. Go. And then once you get to work, it's not like the inefficiencies just stop. It's like, oh, I'm at work, everything's better now. No, you get to an office building that was built using probably many wasteful things that killed many cute little animals' homes and whatever. And the office is so inefficient. Most people spend like 8 to 10 hours to 20 hours, depending on where you work and what industry you work in their office. And then when they leave, whatever time period that's for, the office is generally sitting empty. I'm sure people that work in this downtown Raleigh area, they see the 5 o'clock downtown great migration when everything in downtown is just empty. And in downtown Durham, it's very similar, that a lot of state and city government employees, that the norm is to leave early, and that's fine. But then those buildings sit empty or heated and cooled or whatever the season is, and that's very expensive and that's hugely wasteful. So what if we didn't have to commute to work, or what if fewer people had to commute to work? What would that have an impact for office buildings? First of all, just 10% of these positions were telecommuting over the next 10 years. This is what we'd see. First of all, we'd see 3.3 billion less square feet in commercial office space. Go. Okay, so if there are any real estate developers in the room, you can boo me after. This is not good for the real estate development industry, but it's good for everything else. We would see 28.1 billion saves, fewer tons of greenhouse gas emissions related to the construction and the shipping and the aforementioned killing of the little animals' homes or whatever. You would see a lot of improvements from that as well. But then, so I talk about remote working, I talk about how we all work remotely, and everyone's like, how do you communicate with your coworkers? And generally, I just stare at them for a second. I'm like, the same way you do. So when I worked in an office, my environment was not like this, thankfully. But what I also didn't do is I generally didn't turn to my cube mate and be like, hey, what's going on? Usually, I had to email someone across the building or on a different floor or call them, or we had an internal IM thing. And that's how we communicated. And then we had meetings, which were a waste of time, and I was in middle management, so it was even bigger waste of time. So what happened is we communicated more or less the same ways that my company does today. So we use many of these technologies, which if you work in an office, even if you have that 60-minute commute every day, are probably very similar to the technologies you use. We collaborate in the same way that everyone else does, but the best thing of this is I have a guilt-free way to ignore my coworkers. If my coworker, Bob or Sally or whoever it is like, hey, Doug, I need this, and he's literally standing in front of my door to my office or cubicle or wherever I work, my prison cell, whatever, then it's much less socially acceptable to ignore him. Whereas if he sends me an email or an IM, if it's an email, I can ignore him for maybe 2 days. If it's an IM, I have like 20 minutes max. But when someone's in front of you, if you stare at them any more than 15 seconds, they're going to institutionalize you somewhere, most likely. So what you see is that working from home and all these increased collaboration methods is you have an increase in productivity, which is great for everyone. And when productivity increases, that means cost savings increase as well, and profits go up, just like this great chart shows. So let's look at what some other companies have done. I want to start with a often cited example is JetBlue has a virtual call center, mostly of like stay-at-home moms on the West Coast somewhere, and they take reservations if you call JetBlue. They're not in a call center in India or wherever else it might be. And what they do is they take these reservations and they save quite a bit of money, 20% per reservation. Sun Microsystems has 48% of its employees telecommuting part-time, 6% telecommute full-time, and that has saved the company $387 million in office space savings, and it saved the planet, 32,000 metric tons of CO2 from less driving. Best Buy has like one of the most, corporate at least, has one of the most flexible work environments that you can get, and they've seen a 35% increase in work output through telecommuting, flexible hours, and things like that. Cisco, 1993, they had a telecommuting program. Like, I think my family still had AOL then. And 90% of their employees now telecommute at least some of the time. They saved $195 million in savings due to increased productivity, and the employees love it. But I think most importantly is the employees get to spend more time with their families. We have a couple employees who have children with medical conditions, and it would really be impossible for them to go work all day without having costly caretakers or whatever, but instead they're able to spend more time with their families. Even if your family is perfectly healthy, it's great for your family, besides the aforementioned commute statistics, to be able to do that. So what's the call to action? And you probably won't hear this in future presentations. The call to action is to wait. Because Cisco did a survey. 7 out of 10 college students believe that going into an office regularly is unnecessary, and 1 in 4 of those respondents said that they believe that productivity increases if they're working from home. So that's huge. The new frontier is working from home. It's not going to an office to have your freedoms restricted, to being told what to wear, when to do. You'll gain a lot more things if you're working from home. Your company will gain more, you will gain more, and that's why I think that cities like Dubai, they're building these giant skyscrapers. They're investing in the past instead of thinking about the future. And there are other cities, including in this country, that are spending a lot of money on office space that I think really won't be needed in the foreseeable future. And that's why I think that working from home, it's going to do a lot for our society and our culture and us as individuals. We're going to save time, we're going to save money, we're going to help the environment, we're going to get closer to our families, we're going to do all these things that I think are truly beneficial, and we'll be a lot happier in the process. So that's why I think that the idea that the traditional office is dead or nearly dying and that working from home is the future is an idea worth spreading. Thank you.